games. It's Carnage time!
What's up guys, Roman from RNS Entertainment here, and welcome to the special oversized episode 100 of Comic History, the weekly video series where I retell, explain, and give context to the iconic storylines, origins, and events in the world of comics. When I started Comic History, it was a niche passion project on a channel that wasn't even focused on comics at the time, but gave me an opportunity to share, inform, and re-experience the stories I love so much that it has grown to be the most popular and successful series on my channel. And so for the 100th episode, I wanted to do something big, crazy, and fun. And nothing exemplifies those three words more than the 14-part 1993 mega event and Venom Carnage culmination crossover Maximum Carnage, which to this day remains one of the most recognized and memorable symbiote stories in the history of Marvel Comics, from their entrance into the universe with Spider-Man's black costume, which would go on to be known as the Venom symbiote, in Amazing Spider-Man number 252 in 1984, which I covered along with the origin of original Eddie Brock Venom in my first episode of Comic History, making it even more fitting to cover Maximum Carnage now. By the way, if you want to know the entire story of Venom and Carnage's history up to this point, I have covered all of it in previous episodes, so go check those videos out as well in my Spider-Man Symbiotes History playlist on my channel. Maximum Carnage is a 14-part crossover storyline that ran through all of the Spider-Man titles at the time, including Web of Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Man, Spider-Man, and The Spectacular Spider-Man, along with the first two issues of a brand new Spider-Man title, Spider-Man Unlimited, which function as Part 1 and Part 14 of the crossover. The book features a ridiculous number of characters from Doppleganger to Shriek to Iron Fist, and was so promoted and popular it spawned the SNES and Sega Genesis game Maximum Carnage, along with the sequel game Venom Spider-Man Separation Anxiety, which was loosely adapted from Venom's first solo series, Venom Lethal Protector, which happens at pretty much the same time as Maximum Carnage. If you want to know what happens in Lethal Protector, I did also cover that storyline in Comic History episode 90, so go check that out as well. I could easily have split the amount of sheer content in Maximum Carnage up into multiple videos, but since I was shooting for crazy with this episode, I am going to be covering all of it right here in this video. So strap in, go catch up on the previous episodes if you need the story so far, which I'll also have cards popping up throughout the episode to help you guys out, and prepare to enter a world of Maximum Carnage. Maximum Carnage begins with Cletus Cassidy in full restraints being transferred to the Ravencroft Asylum after being imprisoned within the supervillain prison The Vault following his capture and the apparent death of the Carnage symbiote in his first confrontation with Spider-Man and Venom. If you want to see how that iconic storyline played out, go watch my Origin of Carnage episode of Comic History. Cletus gleefully sings to the guards about how he would murder them all if his clothes were a little more red, and they bring him to a doctor who intends to study an anomaly in Cassidy's blood for links to insanity in his DNA strain. Cletus smiles at her, telling her that there really is a monster in his blood, and when she pierces his skin with the needle, the Carnage symbiote bursts out of the hole, stabbing a nearby guard in the chest and covering Cletus to once again become the ultimate insanity of Carnage. Carnage murders all of the guards in the room and turns to the doctor, telling her that her entire life has been a sick joke, and that in trying to cure the world of serial killers, she had accidentally unleashed the worst one of them all. Carnage continues slaughtering everyone at Ravencroft until he hears a voice cheering him on from inside a reinforced cell door. Ripping the door off the hinges, Carnage is introduced to new character Shriek, who smiles at him and says that she's a huge fan of his, and loved the musical tones of the guards' dying screams. Shriek tells Carnage to cut her free so she can join him in his slaughter spree, and seeing how insane she is, Carnage agrees. Meanwhile, Peter Parker and Mary Jane attend the memorial service for Harry Osborn, who had recently taken up the mantle of the Green Goblin and died trying to murder Spider-Man. Shocked and grieving, Mary Jane and Peter argue over him risking his life being Spider-Man until Peter finally agrees to take 2 weeks off of being Spider-Man to take a break from their constant emotional stress. Meanwhile, Carnage swings through the city with his new girlfriend, recounting the events of his origin and saying that he was ready for his revenge match against Spider-Man and Venom. The two go after what appears to be Spider-Man swinging into an alley, but are immediately attacked by the Doppleganger, a vicious animalistic duplicate of Spider-Man created during Marvel's Infinity War. Carnage easily subdues the Doppelganger, but Shriek says not to kill it, that it was kinda cute in a deranged, psychopathic way. Carnage says, nah, killing is what I do. But when he goes for the kill, Shriek fires a sonic blast between him and the Doppelganger, saying that she wants to keep it. Carnage replies, fine, baby makes 3, and adds another member to their growing family of murderers. The next day, Peter learns of the massacre at Ravencroft and immediately jumps into action as Spider-Man to track down Carnage, knowing that Venom had been able to return with his symbiote multiple times when they thought it was dead. A sonic blast almost immediately fires towards him, and following a quick spider-sense dodge, Spider-Man finds himself face to face with Shriek and Doppelganger, which has grown a deep sense of affection for her and now follows her commands. Spider-Man tries to stay one step ahead of Doppelganger due to its limited intelligence, but when Shriek begins giving it commands while firing her own blast at Spider-Man, he changes tactics and goes for her. When Shriek mentions Carnage, Spider-Man is shocked to find out that they're apparently dating now. And wanting to finish things off before Carnage shows up, Spider-Man knocks Shriek out with a super-powered finger flick to the forehead. His spider sense suddenly goes crazy as Doppelganger viciously kicks Spider-Man at full force, breaking his ribs and sending him tumbling into the alleyway below. Doppelganger picks up Shriek and leaps away to protect her, and Spider-Man collapses onto the ground below, falling unconscious from his injuries. Meanwhile, J. Jonah Jameson opens his office at the Daily Bugle to find Carnage crouching over his desk waiting for him, telling Jameson that he was going to help Carnage go on a Venom hunt. Spider-Man is attacked by random low-level street thugs in the alley, but is saved by Cloak and Dagger, who use their dual powers of light and darkness to disarm the criminals and teleport them into the void that exists within Cloak. Cloak releases the terrified criminals and Dagger says to let them go, kneeling down and picking up Spider-Man's crumpled body, realizing that his injuries are serious. Shriek comes to and tries to regain control over Doppelganger and return to Carnage, but after seeing Spider-Man, it is now focused entirely on going back and finishing his original off. Having lightly tortured J. Jonah Jameson, Carnage swings happily through the sign of the Daily Bugle, having convinced Jameson to report that Carnage is looking for both Spider-Man and Venom to lure them into his revenge. Cloak and Dagger take Spider-Man to their church and reset his fractured ribs as best they can, but by the time they finish, Shriek and Doppelganger crash into the building, with Shriek almost crushing her pet for disobeying her and going after Spider-Man again. During the fight, Shriek reveals that Cloak was tied to the origin of her powers, as she had been a groupie turned drug dealer who had been busted by Cloak and Dagger, being sucked into Cloak's dark void dimension and going insane. Following their encounter, she learned to use her natural sonic abilities to their full potential, along with gaining new powers by being connected to Cloak, becoming an insane murderer and eventually being confined to Ravencroft Asylum. With the fight breaking out into utter chaos, Carnage, who had followed Shriek and Doppelganger's murders to this location and tortured the specifics out of one of the gang members who tried to kill Spider-Man, makes his way into the battle, saying that it was time to get his house in order. The fight immediately shifts in their favor, with Carnage outclassing Spider-Man in power and Doppelganger fighting tirelessly to protect Shriek, who prepares a sonic blast strong enough to murder Cloak, hurling it towards him while Dagger throws herself in its path, being overwhelmed by the raw energy combined with her own light powers and exploding as Cloak screams out for her. Carnage slaps Shriek in the face for almost stealing the killing blow on Spider-Man, and they escape with Doppelganger in tow as the heroes lay defeated. Meanwhile, in San Francisco, Venom is dealing out his own form of street justice as the Lethal Protector, and while killing a few criminals, sees the Daily Bugle's press conference on the Carnage massacre being televised, realizing that while California had become his home, New York needs him now. In the ruined church, Cloak seethes in anger at Dagger's death, refusing to calm down or stop until the people responsible have paid. Before Spider-Man can talk reason to him, Cloak teleports away, and Spider-Man thinks about how he felt when Gwen and Harry and Uncle Ben had died. Carnage, Shriek, and Doppelganger regroup on a nearby rooftop, with Carnage screaming in Shriek's face that although his usual philosophy is random murder, Spider-Man was his to kill. As Carnage yells at his girlfriend, Peter finally returns to Mary Jane, who, after he broke his promise to, he also randomly ditched with no warning the second he heard Carnage was loose. MJ yells at Peter and Doppelganger lunges at Carnage to protect Shriek, but Carnage casually slaps him aside and tells Shriek that their little band has one leader, him. Seeing as Shriek is Carnage's Harley Quinn, she latches onto him and says that she'd follow him anywhere, as long as they murdered their way there together. Peter tells Mary Jane that he can't even stay to heal his broken ribs, because every second he wastes is another that Carnage's crazy family is out killing innocent people. And Mary Jane refuses to accept it, saying that it's not that he can't, but that he won't. Not even for her. Meanwhile, Carnage and crew are doing exactly what Peter said they were, having gone to Central Park and continuing their random killing spree, with Doppleganger using his razor webbing to decapitate guards and the body count getting too high for Carnage to keep up with. Spider-Man swings through the city looking for Carnage, but instead finds Demogoblin, the villain who had previously allied himself with Doppleganger in the Spirits of Venom crossover shortly before Maximum Carnage. Spider-Man plans to follow Demo to his former ally, but after being hit with a pumpkin bomb full of liquefied despair and torment, and another pumpkin bomb which is just an actual bomb, Demogoblin escapes and Spider-Man returns home to Mary Jane. Venom hears about the Central Park killings on a police radio and confronts Carnage at Central Park, which had gone silent after the last screams had died out. Not expecting Carnage to have allies, Venom is ambushed by Shriek and Doppelganger. Later, at Peter Parker's apartment, Mary Jane answers a knock on the door and gasps in terror as Venom collapses into the doorway, having escaped Carnage's group but sustaining injuries in the process. Also, check out Peter's dope bare feet. Meanwhile, Shriek leads Carnage and Doppelganger to their new base of operations, a storage warehouse for rock concert stage props Shriek knew about from her days as a metal groupie. Carnage's happy family plans to spread more chaos tomorrow, noting the smell of sulfur lingering around them as Demogoblin continues to track Doppelganger. The next morning, Mary Jane demands that Peter get Venom, who she refers to as that thing, out of her house. Though Peter tells her Eddie is too injured to be a threat to anyone, Mary Jane storms out and slams the door, saying that Peter literally can't go without being Spider-Man or putting his life in danger for 5 minutes. Peter helps Eddie onto the couch, and they talk about how Carnage could have possibly returned after the Carnage symbiote was seemingly killed in their last conflict. Eddie says that he and the symbiote would rest and heal their wounds, and that then they would stop Carnage together. Peter thinks to himself that he can't work with Venom, and although they had formed an uneasy truce and agreement in Venom Attacks, which sees Eddie Brock become an anti-hero officially and leads into Lethal Protector, Venom was still a murderer. Unsure of what to do, Spider-Man goes to Felicia Hardy, aka Black Cat, through her bedroom window to ask for advice. And after hearing everything, she says that she agrees with Venom that they have to put Carnage down by any means necessary, suiting up and leaping to go join with Eddie while Spider-Man angrily follows. Meanwhile, Demogoblin confronts Carnage and his group, eventually finding that they had similar goals of killing huge amounts of people, though Carnage is out for random chaos and Demogoblin believes that he is purging the world of sinners. As Carnage's growing team prepares to go on another killing spree, Cloak appears behind them, saying that they would pay for Dagger's death. Cloak is quickly overwhelmed by the group of killers, but before they can finish him, Venom, Spider-Man, and Black Cat show up to stop them, with Spider-Man having agreed to join forces with Venom and Black Cat as long as they didn't kill anyone, though neither Eddie or Felicia agreed. After a brief fight, Carnage tells Demogoblin to set the roof of the warehouse ablaze, and for Shriek to use her sonic blast to bring the building down around them, escaping while the heroes scramble. Spider-Man and Venom chase after Carnage and his group, but the Venom symbiote is too weakened by the flames to continue, leaving Eddie to fall to the ground. Noticing that Black Cat is also injured and probably unable to escape the collapsed building, Spider-Man knows that if he takes the time to save them, that Carnage and his group will escape and kill countless more people. Venom sees that Spider-Man is frozen with inaction, and yells at him to go stop Carnage from killing innocents, forcing himself and the symbiote to walk forward through the flames, determined to protect innocent people at all costs. Spider-Man saves Black Cat from the fire and Venom recovers, but the two immediately start fighting between themselves about whether Spider-Man should have pursued Carnage or not. Black Cat eventually stops him and says that Venom is right. Her life is meaningless against the scores of lives that Carnage and his group have been taking across the city. Venom and Black Cat prepare to go after Carnage, but Spider-Man refuses to go with them, saying that he won't play by Venom's rules and condone murder and leaving teammates behind. Venom says that they are wasting time and swings away, with Black Cat quickly following behind him. Spider-Man stands silently for a moment before clutching his still broken ribs in pain and exhaustion. As Carnage's group makes their way through the city, Demogoblin complains about the randomness of their killings and demands that they stop to formulate a plan to murder as many people as possible. Carnage becomes enraged by the statement, flying off the handle and screaming that there is no plan. Carnage rants and raves about his philosophy of random chaos, saying that life is meaningless, the universe has no center, and that its creator is an idiot. With the two about to kill each other over their differing philosophies, Shriek jumps between them and convinces Carnage that he should think of Doppelganger and Demogoblin as the children of his little murder family, and that over time he could mold their characters to his way of thinking. Meanwhile, Peter suits up as Spider-Man after speaking to Aunt May, thinking to himself that there must still be good people out there. The Aunt Mays and Uncle Bens who would still look down on Venom's methods. As he thinks this, he sees that the streets are full of those same ordinary people rioting and violently attacking each other, with Spider-Man finding out that since Carnage's group had begun their slaughter, the entire city had gone insane, with riots and looting and violence breaking out in record numbers. Spider-Man is savagely attacked by the angry mob, pleading with them to regain their senses until he's finally overwhelmed by their numbers. Screaming at them to stop, he fights back with his full strength and screams at the city that if they want to act like devils, he would treat them like devils, that he was tired of always holding back and drawing a moral line only he could see, and that from here on out there would be no mercy from Spider-Man. Meanwhile, Venom, Black Cat, and Cloak decide that they need to recruit more fighters for the upcoming conflict with Carnage, leading them to approach Morbius, the living vampire, who has been violently feeding on the criminals of the city. Mary Jane, furious at Peter for breaking his promises to her, indulges in her old party girl persona at a club opening. But suddenly, Carnage and his group burst in like a force of nature, butchering bouncers and clubgoers as Mary Jane thinks to herself that Peter's insane to think he can fight something like that. Having used Morbius's ability to sense blood to track the killings to the club, Venom and his group burst in and attack Carnage, who prepares to murder Mary Jane without even knowing who she was to Spider-Man. Venom saves her and kneels down, licking her face and saying that Peter and him were even for Spider-Man saving his ex-wife and weighing in Venom attacks. Spider-Man finally arrives on the scene, saying that he was now willing to sink to Venom's level, even if he didn't like it, and the fight rages on until Carnage has Demogoblin torch the entire building with pumpkin bombs, allowing them to once again escape while Spider-Man and his group save Mary Jane and the other remaining civilians. Spider-Man tells Venom that he's with him all the way, and Venom says that they'll never forget that Spider-Man broke their deal already in Venom Lethal Protector, but that since they can use every man they can get, he's in as long as he can keep up. Spider-Man thinks to himself that his life has come to the point where even Venom can't trust him. Venom says that although something seems to have mutated the Carnage symbiote, it still began as a spawn of Venom, and should still carry the same weaknesses, suggesting that they go get the sonic gun Reed Richards developed to fight his symbiote in the origin of Venom. Black Cat also suggests recruiting the Human Torch again like they did in the origin of Carnage, but with the Fantastic Four out of the city on a mission, they decide to send Cloak in search of Firestar, who had initially appeared in the cartoon series Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, and had then recently been brought into the comics instead. When Cloak teleports away, Spider-Man realizes that he shouldn't be able to use his powers at all if Dagger was actually dead, as they usually have to be in proximity to each other for them to work. Meanwhile in Manhattan, the cyborg mercenary Deathlock attempts to stop Carnage's team from their massacre, including new member Carrion, who literally just shows up with no explanation and starts murdering people alongside them. When Deathlock kicks Doppleganger, Shriek screams and blasts him into an electric sign, shorting out his systems and leaving him strung up for Carnage to torture. Spider-Man and Venom's team breaks into the Fantastic Four's headquarters, stealing the sonic gun, which Venom insists on keeping to stop Spider-Man from betraying him once again. Cloak returns having found Firestar, who says that she wants to do whatever she can to help, adding the symbiote's two main weaknesses, sonics and fire, to their arsenal. They then ambush Carnage's group at the orphanage where Cletus Cassidy grew up, using Firestar's heat blast to injure Carnage's symbiote before Venom blasts him with the sonic rifle. Though the proximity to the sound blast does cause the Venom symbiote to recede from Eddie's hand as he pulls the trigger. Carnage begins to walk through the sonic blast, seemingly unaffected by it, but Firestar's heat powers still weaken the Carnage symbiote until it falls off of Cletus in pain. Venom prepares to kill the now defenseless Cletus Cassidy, but Spider-Man pulls him away with a web line, saying that there have to be limits to their methods. Shriek takes this opportunity to scream at Cletus that there are no limits, slashing him in the face and releasing more of the mutated Carnage symbiote from inside his bloodstream. At this point, we are establishing that the Carnage symbiote had mutated upon fusing with Cletus Cassidy's bloodstream, which along with his distinct abilities granted from being born on Earth unlike the Venom symbiote, give the Carnage symbiote near immortality, where if given long enough, it can always regenerate from inside of Cassidy, meaning that the only way to truly kill Carnage is to kill Cletus Cassidy as the host. Of course, over the years, this addition to Carnage's powers is tested to the point of having Carnage float around in space for a long time after being ripped in half and surviving, but is also questionable now because in the current comics, Cletus has been separated from the symbiote for a decent amount of time. This also contradicts other continuity like Web of Carnage, which I covered in my Origin of Spider-Carnage video, where Cletus is revealed to have a serious form of cancer that the symbiote is keeping him alive from. What you should take from this is that Carnage, Cletus Cassidy, and all of the little details of his character are contradictory and ever-changing. Carnage's entire group leaps at the heroes and anti-heroes, with Venom ripping through Spider-Man's web shields to leap in with Cloak and Morbius to go for the killing blow. During the fight, Spider-Man can feel an almost supernatural aura of insanity and evil that seem to be settled over both sides of the fight. And when Firestar asks Spider-Man why he got her involved with what seems to be monsters just as bloodthirsty as Carnage, Black Cat says that they can keep arguing about morals, but the body count will just keep getting higher. Shriek begins to taunt Cloak about Dagger's death, saying that because it was his powers that caused Shriek to go insane, it was his fault that Dagger was dead. She then reveals that while in his dark dimension, she had gained the new power of psychically amping up emotions in other people, using it to cause Cloak to teleport away in fear and shame, and the angry mob of New York citizens to attack Spider-Man and Venom's team. Spider-Man realizes that this is what has caused the riots across New York. With Shriek feeding off of Carnage's insanity, her powers are stronger than normal, and she's been sending insane impulses to the whole city, including Spider-Man and the other characters in the book, which explains why all of them are so quick to violence and anger. Black Cat is smashed over the head by a civilian, and Morbius is blasted into unconsciousness by Demogoblin, leaving Spider-Man and Venom's team down 3 members. When Firestar's heat powers send Carnage running, Venom says that seeing as the Carnage symbiote no longer has much of a weakness to sonic attacks, their only way to end this madness is for Firestar to keep burning him until Carnage and Cletus Cassidy are both dead. Although Firestar initially refuses to take a life, Spider-Man finally becomes so desperate that he urges her to do it. Firestar has such a massive respect for Spider-Man and his moral code that this is enough to shock her into thinking that killing Carnage is the only way. So she flies above him and begins to roast him alive with the full extent of her powers. Venom and Spider-Man watch as Carnage screams and begs and cries for mercy, and eventually Spider-Man yells for her to stop, breaking her out of her resolve as she realizes that deep down she's not able to kill Carnage, pulling back until Cletus is lying on the ground repeating that he doesn't want to die. Venom turns on Firestar in rage, saying that she had betrayed the innocent lives Carnage will now go on to kill. Spider-Man leaps in to defend her, and Venom screams, "We hate you!" smacking Spider-Man across the forest and saying that he's done playing by the Spider's rules, and that now it's going to come down to Venom versus Carnage. Shriek blasts Venom with Sonics, with Venom charging through the pain before finally reaching her, only for the Venom symbiote to slough off of him with Carnage and Shriek standing over Eddie. Shriek starts bashing Eddie in the face until Carnage stops her, saying that they could get much more fun out of killing Venom slowly by torture. With all of his allies defeated and hope seemingly lost, Spider-Man looks up to see Captain America standing over him, offering him his hand. Captain America takes Spider-Man and Firestar to Avengers headquarters, though Black Cat, Cloak, and Morbius decide to immediately go try to save Venom from Carnage's team. While there, Captain America and Spider-Man notice an attempt at hacking the Avengers database by Deathlock, who had been rescued earlier by Iron Fist, who also just shows up for no reason other than that New York is full of superheroes. Meanwhile, Carnage and Shriek leave Doppleganger, Demogoblin, and Carrion to deter their pursuers, while they take Venom into the Torch of the Statue of Liberty to torture him. They hang Venom in chains over an open fire, which keeps the symbiote in constant agony while Shriek and Carnage torture Eddie, blasting him with Sonics and amplifying his own agony back at him with Shriek's powers. Outside, Black Cat, Cloak, and Morbius are being easily defeated by Carnage's team. But when Felicia gets knocked out, yet another random character sees the fighting and joins in. So the anti-hero team is joined by Nightwatch, a blatant Spawn ripoff with a living costume that Marvel created in the 90s after Todd McFarlane left and ripped off Venom. After a lot of fighting, Carnage's team flees back to the Statue of Liberty, with Morbius and Nightwatch flying after them while Black Cat and Cloak recover. Black Cat says that she's been outgunned in this fight since the beginning, and leaves to return to her home, while Cloak returns to his church to search for what to do next. At Avengers headquarters, Iron Fist and Deathlock arrive to form a much more heroic anti-Carnage team, including Captain America, Spider-Man, and Firestar. Spider-Man's new team makes their way into the city towards the epicenter of the riots and chaos, standing over a city in flames, using her powers to transmit insanity and murderous impulses to huge portions of New York. Shriek is able to evade and fight off all of Spider-Man's group for a brief moment, but Captain America's shield knocks her to the ground and leaves the heroes wondering where Carnage is. Meanwhile, the fight between the remaining anti-heroes and Carnage's children has made its way into the Statue of Liberty, where Carnage perches on top of Venom, who is still suspended above the flames. Eventually, Nightwatch is overpowered and Morbius is weakened by the sunrise, so they flee the statue, leaving Carnage to continue to have his fun with Venom. Spider-Man's team continues to do damage control in the city, stopping rapes, murders, and even a woman about to throw her own babies off of a building. Eventually, Shriek comes to and sees Doppleganger and Demogoblin rushing in to rescue her. A huge fight breaks out between the heroes and the villains, with the two teams about evenly matched despite the heroes having way higher numbers. As the villains begin to overpower them, Shriek is suddenly confronted with an army of the civilians that the heroes had stopped from committing crimes earlier, all of whom had snapped out of Shriek's influence and organized to defend their heroes. Shriek grins and raises her hand, saying that she had been psychically transmitting insanity and rage into people's minds subconsciously before, which she automatically does just by having her powers. But when she focuses them and actually tries, she can crank up the intensity to overwhelm most people's minds. The heroes struggle to retain control of themselves, and Shriek yells that it's party time, with the mob that was previously supporting them unanimously screaming to kill them. Meanwhile, Carnage continues to torture Venom, gloating about how he's going to keep this up for weeks before he finally kills him, with Eddie begging Carnage to stop while the Venom symbiote attempts to protect him. Carnage pulls the sonic rifle on Venom, but when he fires, instead of sonics, it launches a large amount of the restored Venom symbiote, giving Venom enough strength to come together and break his chains. Venom reveals that while Eddie had pretended to beg and plead with Carnage, he had sent part of the Venom symbiote into the sonic gun to disable it and give the symbiote time to recover. Carnage screams that this is impossible, that he was winning, and Venom punches Carnage in the face and escapes from the statue. Shriek watches as the amped up people of New York attack the heroes in giant mobs, escaping with her sons while the heroes attempt to control the insanity around them. Eventually, Iron Fist uses kung fu meditation techniques to still the minds of a group of civilians, but is overwhelmed by others until he's rescued by Spider-Man. Spider-Man says if Iron Fist could teach them all how to do the stillness technique, they could stop the mob, and Iron Fist says he could, with 8 to 10 years of training. Ribs still broken, mind influenced by Shriek, and fed the hell up with being in Maximum Carnage, Spider-Man punches a nearby chimney, completely destroying it and screaming that everything was hopeless and that his father was right in believing that the world was full of monsters. At this point in the comics, Peter Parker's parents had seemingly reappeared, but are later revealed to be life model decoys deployed by the Chameleon. Meanwhile, Cloak prays in his church, asking to be guided back into the light, and Peter remembers Aunt May telling him to always listen to his heart and stay by his principles. Carnage rejoins with Shriek and the other villains, grabbing her by the throat with the symbiote and berating her for going out on killing sprees without him, slamming her onto the concrete roof of the building. Doppleganger leaps forward to protect Shriek, firing razor webbing around Carnage's neck and trying to decapitate him. But Carnage impales Doppleganger with the symbiote and kicks him in the face, sending the creature tumbling dead to the ground below. Spider-Man's team of heroes arrive and prepare to fight Carnage, having cleared the area of civilians when Shriek was being attacked. As the villains regroup and face off with the heroes, a blinding light shines on all of them as Cloak calls out for Carnage, with a reformed and revived Dagger leaping out of the dark dimension. Shriek loses it, screaming that she killed Dagger, who explains that when Shriek had overloaded her with energy, Dagger did all but die, becoming one with the light energy of her own powers and then exploding. In her last moment, she was able to escape into Cloak's dark dimension, remaining there until she regained her strength and recovered her physical form. Shriek screams that she'll kill Dagger again, lunging at her and firing sonic blasts, and the others are stopped from joining in by Carnage, who says Shriek should prove herself, and Cloak, who says that Dagger wants to face her killer alone. Dagger gets the upper hand in the fight, and stands over Shriek, saying that while she was in the dark dimension, she had seen the remnants of Shriek's past and emotions from when she was trapped there in her origin. Dagger says that while Shriek had been abused to the point of madness, the person she was before she lost her mind is still there, enveloping her in light, attempting to heal her fractured psyche. Dagger says that she can fix her mind, but Shriek has to want it, and though she cries and considers it, at the last moment her face twists in anger, screaming "I hate you," and firing a massive sonic blast that almost murders Dagger all over again, with Spider-Man saving her at the last moment. Carnage swings in and asks Shriek how she's feeling, and she says disgusting, having been shown the good side of herself buried underneath the murderous evil surface. Though her voice stutters when she says that she's still on Carnage's side, he says that they're a happy family again and turns to kill the heroes. They turn to find Spider-Man standing against all of them alone, with all of the other heroes seemingly disappeared, and attack him at once, with Spider-Man barely managing to survive. When Spider-Man falls to his knees in pain, Carnage has Shriek blast him with her psychic influence, filling his head with madness and trauma and loss and memories of his own failings. Spider-Man endures until Shriek is suddenly hit in the back by a blast from a ridiculous laser wielded by Deathlock, who has suddenly reappeared with the other heroes. Somehow, in the time Spider-Man had kept the villains busy in the fight, Deathlock and the other heroes went to Iron Fist's company Rand Industries and constructed a machine that magnifies the brain's alpha waves and causes the target to suddenly become good, pretty much creating the exact opposite of Shriek's powers. Shriek kneels to the ground and Deathlock continues to fire on the other villains, restoring Carrion to his human identity and causing Demogoblin to realize that he's a bigger sinner than most of the people he kills. Deathlock trains the beam on Carnage, whose pure inner madness and hate fight against it, and he screams in pain for Shriek to stop them. Shriek smiles and tells Carnage to stop struggling, that this is their chance to find redemption. But Carnage screams that there is no redemption, only lies and death and pain. Shriek reaches out to Carnage, begging him to take her hand and find redemption together, but Carnage fights so hard that the energy causes a massive explosion from his body, leaving Shriek to pass out on the street at the feet of the heroes. As the heroes round up the villains, Iron Fist says that Carnage is dead, pointing to a corpse splayed out on the ground with the Carnage face still wrapped around it. Later, Spider-Man reflects on the events of Maximum Carnage, saying that he had never been so engulfed in shameless evil before. As he prepares to go home to Mary Jane, he sees the reflection of Venom behind him, who says that while Spider-Man had abandoned him to be tortured by Carnage to run off and play hero, what really pisses him off is that he cheated Venom out of killing Carnage himself. Still not fully recovered from his injuries, Venom falls into Spider-Man's arms as the voice of Cletus Cassidy comes from the pond, saying that the son of Venom is alive and well. Venom leaps forward and punches Carnage in the face, saying that they will have vengeance on Carnage for their torture. And Carnage grabs Venom by the throat, screaming that his mind is still on fire, that the machine had made him see things and feel things that he didn't want to deal with. Venom bashes Carnage in the head and starts to rip the symbiote from his face, saying that they would peel the layers of skin until they find Carnage's spine. Carnage panics and runs, and Spider-Man says that they need to call Captain America and the other heroes before Carnage recovers from the machine's effect on his psyche. But Venom says no and smashes his arm against Spider-Man's broken ribs, saying that he is done with allies who lack the stomach to do what is necessary. As Venom pursues Carnage on his own, Spider-Man stumbles to his feet to find a phone, call Mary Jane, and check into the emergency room. Peter then literally goes and gets surgery, greeting Mary Jane afterwards with a hug and then telling her that he still wasn't going to be able to take a break from being Spider-Man, because not only is Carnage still on the loose, no one but Venom is going after him. Meanwhile, Venom has chased Carnage to their shared cell at Rikers from Carnage's origin, with Carnage saying that this is where it all began, and trying to murder a random guard. Venom dives in front of the guard to save him from the symbiote spikes, only to have the shocked guard say that he thought Venom was supposed to be just as bad of a killer as Carnage, which Venom replies is nothing but outrageous lies and gossip. Spider-Man takes a little time to rest and spend time with his family, but shortly after, Mary Jane wakes up to find her bed empty, and Peter putting on his web shooters and costume outside. She tells him that she hates how he constantly puts his own life in danger, but that she understands why he does it, and loves him enough that she'll keep trying to accept it. She then gives him her trademark line of "Face it, Tiger, you hit the jackpot," and brings him in for a kiss. Carnage takes refuge in the St. Estes School for Boys where he grew up, but is haunted by the ghosts of his past, including his childhood bullies who he had eventually murdered. Venom bursts in and attacks Carnage, who says that even if his mind is still affected, he's still stronger and faster than Venom. Venom dodges his attack, weblining a board to smash it into Carnage's face, saying that Carnage may be stronger, but Venom is smarter and deadlier. Dazed and lying against the wall he wrote Carnage rules on in his own blood, Carnage weakly says that he's the master of death and that no one could kill him. But Venom smashes him through the wall and looms over him, preparing to rip him to shreds. Suddenly, Spider-Man attacks Venom from behind, saying that they're going to let the authorities decide what to do with Carnage. And Venom lunges back at him, saying that he doesn't understand. Venom created Carnage, and sees Carnage as a twisted reflection of everything they are, and that Venom feels responsible for all of the evils Carnage has committed. Spider-Man says that he totally understands because that's exactly how he feels about Venom, which shocks Venom as he sees himself as a hero for protecting innocence. While Venom and Spider-Man are fighting against each other, Carnage escapes and prompts them to form yet another hastily thought out team-up, with Spider-Man even thinking to himself while they talk that he can't let Venom go free when this is over. With his mind still reeling from the effects of Deathlock's machine, Carnage flees to the last place he can think to find sanctuary, his mother's grave, digging up her coffin with the symbiote, saying that she won't turn him away. Venom brutally attacks Carnage and prepares to kill him, wrapping the symbiote around his throat and saying that Carnage would pay for every innocent life he took. But Spider-Man leaps between them and tells Eddie that Carnage is so insane and twisted from a lifetime of abuse and psychopathy that he's no longer even technically responsible for his actions, and may be more innocent than anyone. Even Carnage tells Spider-Man that that's a load of bullshit, throwing him across the graveyard and saying that Carnage killing people is a part of his very existence, lunging at Spider-Man, preparing to kill him before Venom inevitably jumps back in. Instead, Black Cat shows up and saves Spider-Man from Carnage, having initially been too afraid of rejoining the fight, but eventually finding it in her to see it through. Carnage grabs the coffin and begins to run away with it, but Venom leaps in and starts bashing him into oblivion, asking Carnage if Spider-Man's words were true, if he were truly unable to control his own actions and thus not sane enough to be held responsible. As the effects of the machine wear off on Carnage, Venom realizes that there isn't any more time and dives into Carnage, tackling him into a pile of generators that explode and seemingly kill them both. Eventually, Spider-Man and Black Cat find Cletus Cassidy's body in the flames, badly burned but still alive, and realize that there's a chance Venom could be alive as well, deciding that because Venom's ability to blend into his surroundings means there's really no way to pursue him. Spider-Man and Felicia let Venom leave, as Eddie simultaneously decides to leave Carnage's cleanup and containment to Spider-Man. Suddenly, a bright light shines down on them from an Avengers Quinjet, as the Avengers finally show up after the entire event is already done and countless people were raped, murdered, and butchered on the streets. The Avengers contain Carnage in a stasis cell and peace out, with Spider-Man and Felicia left to notice that the coffin Carnage had claimed was his mother's was empty, meaning that either Cletus had removed the body before, or his memories were wrong, or that he's just randomly crazy and who knows why. Although this wraps up Maximum Carnage on a weird note, to my knowledge it's never explained or expanded upon in all of the years of Carnage stories since. And that wraps up Maximum Carnage, a ridiculously 90s 14-issue mega crossover event that cemented Carnage's importance in the Marvel Universe, helped Venom's already staggeringly high popularity, which had led to the concurrently running Venom solo series Lethal Protector, and also tried to highlight a ton of characters Marvel was trying to push at the time, some of which are fun and some of which are terrible. Nightwatch. I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode, because despite how long it's taken me and how big of a project it has been, Maximum Carnage is a story I always planned to do one day, and episode 100 of Comic History was the perfect time to do it. I also want to thank you guys so much for your continued support. Without you watching and commenting and hanging out live on the podcast, none of this would be possible. And I am so thankful that I'm able to share my love and enjoyment of comics, stories, and fiction with you guys. Comic History was a series that I started not knowing if there would be any audience for it, and the fact that some of these episodes are passing 2, 3, and even 700,000 views at the time of this video is incredible to me. After this, I'm going to work hard on getting content out on a more regular basis, focusing on core video series like Weekly Comic History, Whiskey and Comics each Friday, and weekly episodes of Spectacular Spider-Man Review, which will be coming out this week, along with Comic Rants episodes for big issues of things like Venom. Also, if you're still watching this video, I do want to announce what the next episode of Comic History will be, because I will finally be doing part 4, the final part of the Glenn Rhee character spotlight from The Walking Dead. If you're a new fan and haven't gone through the Comic History playlist yet, you may have no idea what I'm talking about, but that character spotlight is finally going to be finished for those of you who have been waiting. Thanks for getting this series to 100 episodes, guys, and anything you do to support RNS Entertainment, whether it's just watching, commenting, giving a thumbs up, or going above like donating to my Patreon or the Super Chat, etc., is so awesome and makes doing all of this worth it. And as always, I want to give a huge thanks to my $10 and higher patrons for this month, Drew Miles and Jason Cantu, and I will see you all next time.